again, Ryan, Triathlon.com. We're talking about USAT Age Group Nationals. I did it in 2021 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Not going to do it in 2022, but it is back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have a few athletes doing it, so I thought I'd talk about the course a little bit. I did the Olympic and then turned around the day after I did the sprint. I want to make my 12 or 13 hour drive worth my time, so I did both of them. So we're going to jump into it. We're going to talk a little bit about the sprint course. It's a variation of the Olympic course, a little bit different here and there. So we're going to go through it and some tips and suggestions I have for the race. So we're just going to jump right into it. Basically, if you did the Olympic, you had the option to leave your bike in transition overnight, which I took advantage of because I didn't want to have to take my bike all the way back. And where I stayed, I could walk on the trail system back to where I stayed. So I went ahead and I had my backpack. I took all my stuff back, but I went ahead and took a chance, left my bike there, even though it was supposed to rain all night. It did rain all night. It did storm, but it was okay. So I took a chance, and that worked out okay. Just because I didn't want to have to mess with bringing my bike back the next day. I knew I was going to park at a parking garage close to the event and then load up from there and go home. So I just left my bike overnight and then came back, and they move all the stickers around and you re-rack your bike where it's supposed to be. They had racks on the side. You put your bike if you're going to race the next day, and then you come back and you re-rack your bike for the sprint race on Sunday. So if you watch the Olympic review at all that I did, you have to pay attention because there's so many people doing this event that the wave starts off this little dock here in the bay. When I say bay, I mean you're on Lake Michigan. You're in right off downtown Milwaukee, Veterans Park. And what you got is a little kind of bay situation going on here, a little inlet. It's protected from the main lake, so if there's any wind, there's any currents or anything like that, you're pretty much protected. So in here, it was pretty smooth. I don't think it was that windy or wavy or anything like that on race day in 21. But if it is, you should be pretty much shielded, and it should really be a problem. You might see a little bit of wave or current or something like that, but really it isn't an issue. Wetsuit legal. I did full suit. I did tinted goggles just to make sure that if I was facing the sun at any point, I want a problem, especially, let's see when my swim start time. I started at 8 o'clock, so they probably put people in about 6:30. So I had to wait around for about an hour and a half, which in Olympic I kind of alluded to as well. They have gear check-in, so what I did was I wore my wetsuit out, lower half, and just tried to stay warm. It got a little bit cool in the morning and then warmer in the afternoon, but so bottom half I had the wetsuit on, and then upper half just had like a t-shirt or something like that on. So whatever I wasn't going to do, didn't need for the swim or anything like that, put it in my morning clothes bag and then took it to the tent. Especially, here's the kicker, they're not going to let you back into transition and Olympic as well until basically I think everybody's off the bike course. We're pretty much close to it. So you could be waiting, especially if you start at 6:30, you could be waiting an hour or two to even get your stuff. So you have to take a gamble if you're going to take like your cell phone and keys and other stuff. And leave those in a morning clothes bag because sometimes stuff gets lost. So I believe I left my keys in my transition bag, so I couldn't go back in my vehicle. But I think I left my phone. Well, maybe I took a chance and left my phone in the bag because I have my Ironman bag, has my name on it, has my number and everything on there. So in worst case, I could find the stuff if I really needed to. So I had clothes. I had to change the clothes afterwards. I went in. I had a towel. Found a nice little quiet corner and changed my clothes and everything, so I wasn't sitting around my sweaty, gross clothes for 2 hours waiting to get my stuff out in transition. So that was a little key. So I brought hydration because it was getting warm, especially, unfortunately, you think about Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you think about up north, it got really hot, and really humid. So just be ready for that, especially if you're waiting around for an hour and a half for your swim to start. You're going to have to make sure that you're hydrated. Make sure you got nutrition for an hour and a half. So I had my breakfast as soon as transition closed, and I had snacks, and I had Gatorade Endurance and some water that I was just going through. And as people are starting to race, the porta potty line's empty pretty good. So if you need to go to the porta potties, you can. There's plenty of time in between them. So I just kind of hung out. Once it got to pretty close to my group lining up, when I dropped my stuff over at the morning gear bag check-in, then got over to the swim dock. The swim dock is convenient. You can take a drink here real quick. It's convenient in that you can jump in the water and then hang onto the dock, but there's nothing to push off on your feet. So you have to be a little bit careful of that. Once the swim starts, you're all upper body propulsion. You can't really push off anything and get going. So you got to be careful. People push off of you. or you push off other people, or you let them go and you hang out and then you start, which is what I did for both Olympic and sprint. I know I'm not vying for any national or any age group podium placements, so I just kind of hung out to the back and made sure that I tried to find open water as much as possible. There are a lot of people doing this race, sprint and Olympic, so there's going to be contact, there's going to be people. It's a wave start off this dock, so you got to pay attention. You're probably going to be hit a little bit, you're going to be swam over a little bit, so it's just going to happen, even if you hang out towards the back and try to swim your way through or something like that. So basically, I waited to the last minute and sat on the edge of the dock. You could sit there, they line you up like 2 or 3 minutes before the swim start on the dock. So once it got to a minute, I jumped in, hung on, and you're packed in tight there, hanging on to that dock. And especially, they had us out to the edge to edge of the dock here. So if you didn't want to swim extra, you kind of lined up towards the middle to line up that first buoy. But if I was over to the edge because I didn't want to get in and sit there and tread water forever. So I hung out, got in about a minute, and then hung out and treaded water until they said go. And we went, and let's see, Garmin file doesn't look too bad. A little bit of suspect, but like I said before, I don't give a whole bunch of credit to Garmin. I averaged 142 per 100 yard, which is probably pretty close to my open water swims. But as you can see, the course is pretty straightforward. Just swim out, take a right, swim back. The catch is to make sure that these two buoys, you know which one's which, and you're keeping them to the right as you're swimming, because there are some people that saw this one and were swimming diagonal and got stopped and got sent back. So that is a lot of extra swimming if you miss one of these turns or sight off a different buoy than you're supposed to. It is kind of cool. You swim underneath this bridge. The spectators were there waving and everything, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, you're in this little kind of bay dock area with boats and stuff, and they got the watercraft and everything. So there's really not waves to deal with. It's pretty dark water, but no waves per se, except for the watercrafts going around and from the other swimmers. So that made it pretty choppy in itself, just all the swimmers and all the wave craft and everything. But, like I said, if it's windy, if it's crazy out there in the lake, you're going to be shielded from it in this kind of harbor area. So I think that's a convenient thing for this race is if anything's going on out there, you'll be shielded from it, and they can pretty much have the swim kind of no matter what, unless it's extreme crazy weather. So just be ready for that. That the swim probably won't be canceled. So once you get out, you hit the transition area. So you come out on these little sidewalk areas, and you come into transition. So here's the interesting part. So we'll swim, Olympic, sprint swim course, sprint bike course. So once you come out in transition, it had rained a few days before. It rained probably most every day that I was there, and then the evenings it would rain overnight, and it rained all night the night before the sprint race. So the transition was already a soupy mess for the Olympic, and it was a super sloppy mess for the sprint. So, if you're putting your shoes on your bike and then you're hopping on and coming out of transition, your feet are going to be covered in mud, unless you found some magic line that didn't have any mud on it or anything, which is possible. For the sprint, I believe I had my shoes on my bike and then carried my socks over to the edge where I found some grass, and then put my shoes, or actually I carried my shoes and my socks, and I put my shoes and my socks over on an area where it wasn't covered in mud, and then ran out and then mounted my bike and rode. It probably added a little bit more time, but I just, if I'd have gone sockless, my feet would have been covered in mud. If I'd have put socks on, they'd been covered in mud. If I'd put my bike shoes on and ran through transition, been covered in mud. My bike would have been covered in mud. I carried my bike through there to leave transition, come back in transition. When I got my bike picked up after the race, I carried it through there because it was a muddy, sloppy mess. So just be ready for that it is a grass area, unless they've changed something drastically since last time I was there last year. If it rains, it is going to be a sloppy mess. So just be prepared for that. So coming into transition, like I said, I came in, tried to find the best line I could where I wasn't running through a bunch of mud, got my bike and everything ready, grabbed my shoes and my socks, carried them over to the fence over here by the exit, leaned my bike up against the fence, put my shoes and socks on, and then ran through. There's still mud there. You can't escape it. I got a little bit of mud on me, but not as much as I was worried about. That way I still, because if you get too much mud in your clips and your shoes, it's going to be, you can't clip in unless you sit there and clean the mud off your shoes. So the last thing I want to be doing is sitting outside of transition, cleaning mud off my shoes. So that strategy allowed me to just clip right in and hit the road. So basically, you're doing this first out and back that the Olympic course does, and you're coming out here, going up the bridge and down, and you're pulling a U-turn coming back, which is nice because they cut out the Olympic goes back here into the section through some neighborhoods that the roads weren't the best last year. It was concrete. The cracks were kind of separating. The rubber was coming up through the cracks. It was just bump, 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 and it was just really slow and grinding, and just felt like it just zapped all your momentum whatsoever. All this section, once you get past the bridge, on the downside of the bridge over here, coming back over here to Russell Avenue for your U-turn, it was new pavement, smooth as glass. Even though you're doing some uphill and stuff, and there's a little bit of a breeze, wasn't that much of a breeze, but it was nice. There was no bumps, no nothing. It was just smooth sailing. And then when you get back to the bridge, then it's kind of rigid. You know, they put deeper ridges in the concrete, so it was a little bit. The rolling resistance was pretty weak, even going up the hill, down the hill. So just be prepared for that. But once you come back down the hill, as soon as you hit transition, you got to pull a U-turn to come back in to do your dismount. So you can't just come roaring into transition, or else you're going to miss your turn. You're going to fly off the course, and it's not going to be a good situation for you. But basically, like I said, coming out here, I mean, you're kind of going uphill this entire time. It's kind of a false, flat-looking thing. Going out to turn around, then coming back, you get a little bit of steam coming back out until you hit the bridge, and then coming back out, you got one more little climb out here, and then you're gonna have to take it back on a U-turn, and you come through, and then you hit transition area. So it's not super challenging. I mean, you can look back at my file here, 19.3 miles per hour. Wasn't the best performance on my bike that I've ever done. Let's see what the elevation gain was. So 460 feet of elevation gain over approximately 12.3 miles. So that's nothing to sneeze at per se. But it wasn't like super challenging. You know, it wasn't super killer or anything like that. I think, you know, doing an Olympic the day before and trying to run it as hard as I could, you know, drained me a little bit or whatever. But I think it's a good course. I liked it. I just wish I could have ridden it faster. I really don't have any bad things to say about it. I think there's some aid stations on the course, maybe 12.3 miles. I'd put an aid station. I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically, I mean, for a sprint, you need some fluids and you really maybe a gel or something like that, and nothing more than that. Like I said, you need to manage sitting there before the race starts. If you've got a 2-hour window before your race starts for the sprint, going through the other age groups, you just got to be ready for that. But if you're ready for that, then basically when you're doing the race, you should be racing a sprint hard enough that at really any point in time, having food really isn't going to be an option because your body's just not going to process it because you're running so hard. But that's a different story for a different time. But this course, I think, except for the bridge where you had to climb for a good little distance, the rest of it, I mean, you could hammer pretty hard if that's your thing. Like I said, I mean, you look at the elevation profile, it's pretty much flat here in between here, and you come back through this little section here, and there's a little bit of climbing and everything, but basically there's 2 U-turns and that's it. So it's pretty nice in the fact there's not a bunch of turns and a bunch of cornering and stuff like that. You just ride it and right back. The roads, pretty much we had at least one side of the road at all times for out and back, and that was plenty of room. There's really no congestion of traffic. I wasn't worried about cars on the course. Had plenty of room. There's nothing really to worry about there. Plenty of room for all the bikers and all the athletes doing the race. Really, at any point in time, I didn't feel like I was like boxed in. I couldn't get around people, and it was like hindering my performance of the race. So basically, I think this venue lent itself well to this race and the amount of people that were out there. So that was nice for the bike course. Then when you get to the run course, kind of alluded to this again in the Olympic, you come out to this little out and back here to the little peninsula thing going on here in these little boat docks. There's very little shade. So if you're going to spend all your energy up front, you're going to pay for it because, especially if it's later in the day, it's pretty warm. But once you get back here, there's some shade and a little bit of shade going on. But you got to watch out. There's a couple times you have to take a curb. You have to jump over a curb to get across some streets and stuff. So you got to pay attention to that. In the trails, you know, in some spots, it's a paved trail and trees grow roots under it, and there's nothing really anybody can do about it. So just make sure that you pay attention to that. You don't want to trip over a root that's heaved up the trail, some little spot or something goofy. So just be aware of that. But basically, when you're out there, it's straightforward. There's plenty of aid stations, plenty of room for everybody to be running out there. It's not wall-to-wall people. It was nice. The run is probably one of my better legs, so just bridging from person to person, kind of having a little carrot out there. At no point in time did I feel like I was alone. At no point in time did I feel like I was overcrowded. I think it was just right how wide the course was and how many people had running the course and the spacing of all the athletes and everything. Look at my data real quick. So this one was a little bit nicer. I was managed 7-minute miles just about. Like I said, so I started at 8 o'clock, so I ended at around 9:30. So at that point in time, heat wasn't as much of a factor. So I was able to run that pretty hard. But the interesting thing was, once you got here to the finish line, it had rained so much. This little park area, let's see if it shows a better shot of the finish line area. So finish line area, let's see, expo, transition, come out here. Yeah, here we go. Finish. So I had this little fountain here. The finish line area was inundated with water. It was, you come across the finish line, before the finish line, it was grass. So towards the end of the sprint there, you pretty much had to stay on the edges because it was just a soupy mess. It was sucked in your shoe and probably pulled your shoe off. It was a mess. But then they had a platform for the finish line, so you jump on there, it's not a big deal. But it was soaked. So you had to be a little bit careful not to slip or trip or anything like that. Once you get to the finish line area, there's probably like 2 to 3 inches of standing water all over this place. Again, there's nothing I can really do about it because, it just rained so much the night before. The only, I will say, the finish line food, it was a cold, rubbery chicken sandwich, I believe, that just did not sit well, didn't taste good. It was so they could do better on the finish line food, just saying. So after that, the key with the Olympic and the sprint is you're going to have to wait, even in the later swim waves, you have to wait a while to get your bike out of transition. So I went over here, I got my stuff, I got my finish line food, I got some food, I got some hydration, kind of piddle farted around a little bit. I had my change of clothes, my morning back, so I changed my clothes. I've had my phone with me, so I'm just checking in. And it probably took another hour before they started even letting people in to get their bikes. And, for the day and age of post-COVID world in 21, when everybody's being so careful, it was a horde of hundreds of people trying to get in there and get their bikes out of there. So I would say after the races, just kind of take your time. Don't be in a hurry. Unless you're in a later wave and they've already opened transition up to go get your bikes out of there, you're going to be waiting for a little bit. And especially it got kind of warm. So I found my shady spot. I was sipping on some Gatorade and some water, just taking it easy. So just be prepared that after you get done with your race, it's going to take a minute because thousands of people have done that race and they're in there getting their bikes out. And it was a muddy mess. So I carried my stuff, carried my bike out because I didn't want to get covered in mud. So you just got to be a little careful with that. So other than that, that's, like I said, I'd pack a change of clothes in your morning clothes bag because they have a checkout tent right here. That's number 2. So you can go get that after the race and you can change in, like I had a towel in there, use water, kind of did a makeshift shower real quick, change my clothes, just so I wasn't sitting in my gross stuff for another hour and a half. Changed my clothes, had my phone, checked in, all that kind of good stuff, and then just waited to get my bike out of there. So I went through that kind of quick. Hopefully you were able to stay for the whole thing. I looked at my comments here. I'm doing this live on Facebook. Didn't see any comments live. So if you see this later and you're doing USA AG Group Nationals in August 2022 in Milwaukee, or it comes back to Milwaukee and you're seeing this later, post questions or comments on Facebook, on YouTube. Give it a thumbs up on Facebook, YouTube if you liked it, if it helped you out. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the notification bell for future events, future venues, anything else I'm going to do out there. So hopefully this helped you out. Like I said, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I get notifications. I'll come back and check them. I check them every day. So if you have any questions, let me know. With that, if you're doing USAT AG Group Nationals here in 2022, good luck out there. Train hard and race well, and we'll see you at the finish line.